So we have dedicated ourselves to elucidating the principles of regenerative systems, and the way we conceive or conceptualize a regenerative system is along the lines of the principle of Usufruct. And Usufruct means that anything with inherent generative potential, like the land, must be respected as a dispensation from the divine. In other words, that it has been given to us in trust. We do not own it, but we must pass it down from generation to generation intact, with its usufruct intact, with its generative potential undisturbed, unmolested, undiminished. So where we're going with that is, without a faculty of appreciation within ourselves of what is a regenerative system, what is regenerative power and potential, we won't know when the wool is being pulled over our eyes economically. We won't know when we're being sold a bill of goods, because we will think that our pocket full of $100 bills makes us somehow privileged and powerful, but it doesn't, because it represents debt more than it represents equity. It represents a liability more than it represents a power for regenerative good in the world. And the reason I say that is because the very precepts, the very mechanics of a Fiat currency system, which is what we have today, is inherently unregenerative. It is believing that the earth is an unrestricted and almost indestructible resource that can be continuously mined, and therefore the economy itself does not have to take account of its deficits relative to the ecology, relative to Mother Nature's bank deposits. And so, unfortunately, in the Anthropocene, which is now the name of the geological era in which we live, humankind has exceeded the planet's regenerative capacity. It's called overshoot. Ecological overshoot. It's an actual term, and it means when human society, at what point in the year does human society reach the overshoot day? It's usually sometime in October, meaning for that year it only took us 10 months to use up the entire usufruct of the Earth's generative potential for that year. And from that point on, we're eating into her long-term regenerative powers. That's the real problem with overshoot. Can you get the rainforest back after you've destroyed the larger ecosystem that supports it? That remains to be seen, because the planet hasn't dedicated itself yet to all those kinds of ecological restoration priorities that weigh so heavily on my heart and are my ultimate aspiration as a social entrepreneur. I want to be the Howard Hughes of regenerative systems. I want to be an industrialist, but not the kind of industrialist that takes away from nature, the kind that puts back, the kind that reforests the clear cuts for public benefit rather than private gain, the kind that ensures food, shelter, and clothing and medicines are all available free of charge. The only reason we have poor people on this planet, in my mind, is because somebody wants to run a toll booth called a central bank and say, you cannot get shit unless you use our pre-approved, stamped, legal tender dollars. Because without that, you're just excluded. You are now part of the disenfranchised masses if you don't have access to the king's specie. But it's not even specie, because specie means something with inherent value. A fiat note has no inherent or intrinsic worth. Food does. Forests do. Ecosystem goods and services do. We have to regenerate our economies, friends, by getting back to the whole notion of a regenerative system. That's why I'm as passionate as I am, almost as our founding fathers were, some of them anyway, about their land, about their capacity to be producers rather than net consumers of the Earth's bounty. If you want to help your fellow human beings, learn how to feed them, learn how to clothe them, grow hemp, grow hay, raise horses, do whatever you need to do to keep the land fertile, because that is your rock and your salvation on this plane, is the generative capacity of the land to uphold you. It's Usufruct. Okay? We've talked about these things before, and we will speak of them again. These are our fireside chats at the end of an era of consumption, and it is the end. Industrial agriculture has proven it is not able to feed the world. We must empower every community that is a community stewarding their lands to do better, to learn techniques such as vermicomposting, a regenerative practice that enhances fertility and yields, and therefore the overall prosperity long term of a community, focused on building soil fertility and food security. This can happen at the macro scale as well, my friends. This can happen community-wide. This can happen in your own county, in your own backyard. Even though my garden this year is very diminutive because I was lazy and only added about 2 to 3 inches of new topsoil to beds that I've been growing into productive beds on basically clay, I am going to get seeds of all kinds out of those diminutive crops. I'm going to get amaranth, and I'm going to get pumpkin, and I'm going to get collards, kale, all manner of seeds will come out of it, even if I can't harvest a lot of the greens because the vegetative growth is somewhat low. Now, if you look at our overall community dynamics and our economics today, we may be in exactly that situation, everybody. We may be going to seed, so find out which crops, hypothetically and metaphorically speaking, are ready for harvesting their seeds. Who amongst your circle, your spiral of friends and family, are ready to take on the challenge of social permaculture and regenerative systems in your communities? This is an alert. We need these types of advocates and activists working on the circularity of the economy at the local level today, tomorrow, and every day hence. Peace be with you, and join us now in the revolution. Run wild. Run wild. You have permission.